Israel says it has doubts about Hamas disarming. The group and other Palestinian factions in Gaza have agreed to lay down their weapons, but they say it's dependent on the withdrawal of Israeli troops, which Israel has refused to do unless they disarm. So where does that leave Gaza? This is Inside Story. Hello, welcome to the programme. I'm Frankie McCamley. Disarming means giving up the weapons, nothing less. Those were the words of Israeli government officials after Hamas announced that it was ready to disarm. The move is part of a US-brokered plan to end Israel's war on Gaza. President Donald Trump's proposal includes the withdrawal of the Israeli military from the Strip. An international stabilisation force would then take control of security, working alongside a new Palestinian police force. But Israel says it has no plans to leave unless Hamas completely disarms. And Hamas wants Israeli troops to pull out before it lays down its weapons. So how will Trump implement his plan? Well, we'll talk to our guests in a moment. But first, this report from Michael Apple.
Donald Trump's announcement that Hamas has agreed to disarm coincides with an escalation in Israeli attacks across Gaza. The US president says his board of peace reached a historic agreement for what he says is the complete disarmament of the group and other Palestinian factions in the Strip. He calls it a major milestone in implementing the next phase of his peace plan, unveiled in September. The first phase began in October when a ceasefire came into effect. What's missing from Trump's statement is that Hamas's willingness to disarm is conditional. It's dependent on Israel halting its attacks and withdrawing from Gaza. This places the onus on Israel to act, just months before Israelis go to the polls, with Benjamin Netanyahu seeking re-election.
The current Israeli government does not want to implement this agreement because they have elections in 2 months. They are unlikely to make any substantial concessions to Palestine before the elections at the end of October.
Several members of his security cabinet have said recent developments change nothing, while the Prime Minister's spokesperson says Israel believes that if its forces are redeployed before Hamas disarms, the group will expand its presence. At a recent US cabinet meeting, the critical question of what happens next went unanswered.
What comes first? Does Israel pull back and then Hamas disarms, or does Hamas need to disarm and then Israel leaves Gaza?
We do have an understanding with Israel. Israel is very happy about it. Israel helped us, and they've been very good.
Israeli attacks have killed at least 1,250 Palestinians in Gaza, despite the ceasefire. For many Palestinians, statements about progress towards peace are just words.
Every few months, the relevant parties tell us that a ceasefire agreement is close. People remain optimistic, but the reality is just empty talk. We've heard similar words far too many times, and here we are, still facing death.
Experts warn that trust between Hamas and Israel is non-existent. And, as implementation is the greatest impediment to any agreement, is Trump the only one capable of breaking the deadlock? Michael Apple, Aljazeera, for Inside Story.
Well, let's bring in our guest now from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. We have Xavier Abu Eid. He's a political analyst and former advisor to the Palestinian negotiating team. In Whitefish, Montana, we have Michael Mulroy, former US Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for the Middle East. And in Tel Aviv is Nimrod Novick. He served as a special envoy and senior advisor to former Israeli Prime Minister Shimon Peres. A warm welcome to all three of you. Michael, I would like to start with you over in the US. So we have Hamas. It is agreed to disarmament. Then we have Israel saying, we need confirmation that this is definitely 100% the case before we start to withdraw. So is this now a case of Donald Trump piling on pressure to Benjamin Netanyahu? And if so, how far do you think he's willing to go, especially in the backdrop of these elections?
It's good to be with you, Frankie, my fellow guests and your audience. I think that's exactly what the president's doing here. It's obviously part of the 20-point plan and the most difficult and many difficult parts. Essentially, who's going to move first? Is Hamas going to disarm? If they're going to disarm at all, are they going to do it before the IDF withdraws from Gaza? That's a big question. I certainly wouldn't think that the IDF would want to withdraw and then not see them actually disarm and then have to go back in, essentially go back in by force. So I think this is what everybody's going to be looking at, and who is going to replace them. This international security force has been discussed, a Palestinian police force. But we really need to see the details to determine whether this is actually going to happen or it's just a statement that's reiterating the 20-point plan itself.
And Nimrod, I'd like to bring you in here. Israel, of course, incredibly skeptical of Hamas's agreement to disarm. There is clearly no trust between either side. Do you think Mr. Netanyahu is likely to succumb to pressure from Donald Trump, especially we're talking he's heading towards elections in the country? Does he need the backing of Donald Trump?
Well, I doubt very much that we're going to see much progress before there is a change in government in Jerusalem. Whether Netanyahu would have gone for it or not, were he in a different coalition, that's speculation. But given the fact that he brought into his coalition the most extreme elements of Israeli society, he is now beholden to them. And therefore, I doubt very much that he is able, even if he wanted to go for major moves in Gaza, even if the president were to ask for it.
And Javier, Hamas has made this offer. Is it in the expectation that Jerusalem is not able to it's going to find it politically difficult at the moment to accept this, allowing the group to really demonstrate a bit of flexibility here and pass the baton, so to speak? It's been accused of playing games by Israel a number of times. Is that the case here?
Thank you, Frankie. I would just make a small correction and say that Jerusalem is not recognized as Israel's capital internationally. Now, starting by understanding what Hamas is thinking about, Hamas understands that they are going to be provoked by Israel. And there were many messages by Palestinian leaders over the past 48 hours saying that Netanyahu is going to try to provoke this. Now, the question here is whether the U.S. is going to make use of the leverage when it comes to Israel or not. So far, history doesn't show that President Trump has been really willing to use this leverage here, but it seems this time there is a change of tone, and perhaps this may bring about a change, but I'm not from those who are very optimistic about the future of this agreement.
Why now, would you say, for Hamas? Why would Hamas be agreeing to this now? Is it internal pressure, external pressure from negotiators? Is it financial pressure or a change in leadership? What would you put this down to?
Hamas is certainly very weakened. It doesn't have the amount of regional allies it used to have previously. Most of Gaza is damaged or destroyed, and they need to find a way out of the situation. Now, what they are trying to do now is trying to link the disarmament that will be made to a Palestinian entity, not to Israel, to Israeli withdrawal. And that's, I think, the main point to believe that there will be trouble. I mean, first of all, Israel has to allow this new Palestinian body to enter Gaza in order for them to lead the disarmament of Hamas. This so far hasn't happened. And then on the other side is whether Israel will be willing to make clear that the famous yellow line of the ceasefire agreement was just a temporary line that they are going to continue withdrawing, which so far, through developments on the ground, seems it's not going to be the case.
Nimrod, do you think that Israel would ever leave Gaza?
Yes, I'm quite certain about it. Look, President Trump has demonstrated over the last more than a year that he does have substantial leverage vis-a-vis Prime Minister Netanyahu. Don't forget, he forced upon him ceasefire in Gaza twice, ceasefire in Lebanon twice, ceasefire in Iran twice, and that famous, embarrassing phone call to the Emir of Qatar to apologize for the Israeli strike last September. So the president does have the leverage. The question is he willing to use it at a politically sensitive moment in Israel? I happen to think that the Board of Peace officials and the U.S. government officials who've been working on this plan for the last 6 months finally realized that their initial intent of having it all happen literally or almost literally overnight, within weeks, that is to say, I think they have sobered up. They realized that it's going to take a lot longer, as it has anywhere in the world, disarming militants. And therefore, they are now talking about yet to be negotiated 6 months intervals. If that is the case, that takes into consideration both Israeli political time schedule with elections in late October and the U.S. Midterms in November. And therefore, maybe beyond that moment, we're going to have a president more free to apply pressure and perhaps, and I sure hope so, and even anticipate, an Israeli government that does not want to obstruct the 20-point plan, but to make it happen. A different government with a completely different vision about the Israeli-Palestinian and Israeli regional dynamics.
And Michael, there, Nimrod, just talking about timelines there, obviously elections coming up too. Why do you think Donald Trump is doing this now? Is it a distraction from elsewhere where maybe other conflicts aren't going his way? He's deeply unpopular in the US at the moment. His ratings are down, especially over the Iran war. Has he chosen this time specifically, or do you feel that this is just the time that the negotiators have come to this plan?
So it could be all of the above, of course, but ultimately he put a lot of time and effort in his own personal name on this plan, and he wants to see it progress. If it simply failed and just went away, that would not go well when it comes to his legacy in his second term in foreign policy. And obviously the Iran war, from the U.S. perspective, certainly the U.S. population's perspective, is not going well. It's very unpopular. It started off being very unpopular, which is somewhat unusual for when the U.S. goes to war, and it seems to be growing in unpopularity. So unless that turns around, it's going to go down as not a success for his second term. So perhaps he's trying to focus on this because this could be. It's still, I think, certainly. Could be a substantial milestone if it's successful for his foreign policy legacy, and that's potentially why he's doing this. And of course, he also would like to see, I think, a peaceful Gaza in the future.
Let's talk about the disarmament and the withdrawal itself. That is why we're here today. So we're already seeing different interpretations of this deal. Danny Danon, who is Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, said that disarmament means all weapons are out of Gaza. Nimrod, I want to come to you. Do you think this is what the deal says? Do you think we're already seeing different interpretations? And if so, what could that mean?
Well, I've yet to see an agreement of this sort that is not given to different interpretations, simply because spelling out every detail almost guarantees rejection by one side or another. So yeah, you got to give some room for what Henry Kissinger used to call creative ambiguity, which sometimes becomes an impediment for progress. I believe that a government, again, I'm looking at it from a parochial Israeli perspective, where we want basically two things: Israeli security and Gazans getting out of the awful misery in the wake of October 7th and the war that ensued. In that context, I think a government that would want to proceed with the 20-point plan, make it a success, will look at it not as a sequence. Are we going to withdraw first, or are they going to disarm first? I think they're going to look at it as a, if you will, a multidimensional zipper, where each side makes a move with a reciprocal move anticipated and guaranteed by the other side. And therefore, gradual withdrawal, gradual weapons gathering, gradual efforts at reconstruction. All of these will be step by step by step. It's going to take its time, but it needs not confidence among the parties. I think that trust is overrated in these contexts, but rather goodwill, a determination to move forward. And if I may add just one point, I believe that the timing was aimed also, in addition to everything that Michael analyzed, also was meant to prevent an Israeli temptation, or I should say a temptation by our prime minister, to create a security crisis in Gaza in the lead up to the elections. I think I heard that from several American interlocutors, that coming up with a plan might prove a successful political preemptive move.
Javier, I'd love to get your thoughts on what Nimrod was just saying there, and also how Hamas or the Palestinians as well would be interpreting this plan, and the fact that we've got the Israeli ambassador to the UN saying that all weapons need to be removed completely from Gaza. What is your take on that, and what is your take on the plan, and maybe that creative ambiguity that Nimrod was talking about?
Certainly, when you have a plan that is being presented a couple of months before the Israeli elections, you are going to find a number of Israeli officials, including particularly someone like Mr. Danon, trying to reinterpret this agreement. This agreement was negotiated by Hamas. I think the process that has been going there is very clear in terms of what's the sequence. But I would also like to emphasize on the fact that the 20 points plan were presented as a way to end the mass killings, the genocide in Gaza. It's not a plan that Palestinians should look into as being very hopeful, for example, to have a political agreement or a final settlement. In fact, it's the first time we have a plan that separates Gaza from the West Bank. U.S. officials have been saying that they have finally found an alternative to the PA and to Hamas. No one is talking about justice for the Palestinian people after the mass killings that took place in Gaza. So in other words, this is something that people support for the sake of ending the killings. But there are at least 3 steps that were supposed to be taken before Hamas disarmament that has not been taking place so far. One is the end of humanitarian aid, that we've had it at least at 15% of what they were supposed to have, 600 trucks of humanitarian aid a day. At the same time, the reopening of the Rafah crossing, that for Israel was more about opening it for people to leave Gaza, but not for people to go back to Gaza, as well as the other elements that were around the idea of the Israeli withdrawal that they are not at this stage recognizing. So I don't think that this is too much about interpreting the agreement. I think the agreement is very clear when it comes to sequencing, but I think also there's also a big question with regards to where this is going to take us when it comes to having a political solution.
And Michael, I just want to get your response on that, because I mean, here on Aljazeera, we speak to Palestinians daily. We have reporters in the Gaza Strip who say that conditions are awful. You know, that the aid isn't getting through, the medicine isn't getting through, the food isn't getting through. People are starving there; they have nothing. How could you see Donald Trump still trying to move this forward when, as we were just hearing, some of the previous steps haven't been done yet?
So, I mean, I would agree with the assessment on the conditions there, of course. And I think I don't speak for the White House, but I think they would say that part of the solution to the humanitarian crisis is to disarm Hamas, to get an international security force in there. They could also, of course, assist in getting food to people who need it. They don't just need to be security. And obviously, the police force can also have a dual function. But I can tell you, as somebody who spent most of my career in the operational side, not the policy side, that disarmaments in conflict zones are one of the hardest things to do. It's going to be very difficult to see where and how this is going to be validated. Who are they going to turn their weapons over to? Is it going to be the force that's coming in or not? Are all of them going to agree to it? Or a large portion not going to agree to it and simply hide their weapons? It's going to be a very difficult endeavor. It's certainly worth going forward with the effort itself, but it's going to be very difficult to determine if they have in fact disarmed. And the idea that you're going to get all weapons out of Gaza, I think, is almost an impossible standard. So there's going to have to be a lot of, I think, understanding of the difficulty of this and a belief that there's going to be many phases that will go into this before the international security force will be fully in control. But I do think, to the point of your question, Frankie, that having this international stabilization force will assist in alleviating this humanitarian situation.
As you say, there are a really big job ahead. And I think there is a lot of focus on the demilitarization of Hamas and who takes control of that and who makes sure the tunnels are closed, the weapons are taken away, and all, whether it's big weapons or small weapons, who takes those away. But when it comes to Israel, Nimrod, I'd like to come to you. One aspect of this proposal, of course, is the withdrawal of Israeli forces. But Aljazeera has satellite imagery that shows Israel's expanding, constructing military outposts in Gaza. If it's preparing to withdraw at some point, why is it building infrastructure inside the territory?
No, I don't think that the current government is preparing to withdraw. I think the current government is driven by very extreme elements in Israeli society, really brought in from the fringes of society into very powerful positions in the government by the prime minister. And this government is not out to withdraw. As a matter of fact, members of this cabinet go as far as to promise their constituencies that Israeli settlements are going to go back into Gaza, which the prime minister was forced to rule out publicly. The interrelationship between all the elements, which I think as principles were gathered well in the 15 points that announced last week, the elements are there. A lot of negotiations will be required for the implementation of each, and none are going to be implemented in isolation of the other. And therefore, until you have an Israeli government willing to start the withdrawal in a gradual manner in order to show that early disarmament works and therefore further disarmament is worth pursuing, that the beginning of reconstruction is there, so Gazans are gradually emerging out of the awful misery of the last 2.5 years. You got to synchronize all of that. It's a monumental job, and I hope that the Board of Peace, the U.S. government, and those elements of the international community who are lending a hand to this effort realize, as Michael said, how complex it is. Look, disarming in Northern Ireland took a decade, and you cannot compare the IRS to Hamas, God forbid. Disarming in Colombia took 8 years. Gaza is smaller, Hamas is weaker, and therefore it does not have to take that long. But it's a complicated process. And the fact that the negotiators led by Mladinov realized that you got to show the Hamas operatives that they and their families are going to have a future, even though Hamas will no longer run the show and will no longer be armed. I thought that was a very wise way to go about it, implementing all the lessons from the de-Ba'athization in Iraq.
Okay, I just want to pick up on that point you just mentioned there, the future of Hamas. Javier, if Hamas does give up its weapons, what happens to its leaders, to those who have worked for Hamas? Can it become a solely political movement?
This will certainly be part of negotiations. And I think there is a difference between people that used to work in the government apparatus in Gaza, that they will have to be integrated somehow and find a formula into either the PA or any sort of government that will be ruling over Gaza, as opposite to leaders of Hamas. And I think if I were in their place, I would be negotiating right now elements with regards to their own security, as well as some sort of immunity. Now, regardless on what they are going to do, it's clear that Hamas will not be ruling Gaza, nor they will be ruling the West Bank, and they will have to go into different dynamics. Also, understanding that probably in Palestine we are going to have elections in November, and if those elections go ahead, Hamas will also have to make a choice whether they are going to accept the conditions being imposed on those who run for elections, basically accepting all the PLO agreements signed, including the Oslo Agreement and respecting international law and UN resolutions, or they will be going to the sides. I personally believe that Hamas will have to make that choice very soon, and perhaps they will try to reinvent themselves into something else that will represent their ideology with regards to political Islam.
I just want to get, just before we finish, I just want to get your final thoughts really on this peace plan, on this proposed peace plan that's been put forward, and what the biggest obstacles are to come. Is it the plan itself? Is it the details? Or is it simply trust between the two different parties? Javier, I'll come to you first.
I think a big problem, I was listening to the examples that were put before regarding Colombia or Northern Ireland. I think that the main difference here is that what is being proposed is simply a ceasefire and some sort of reconstruction in Gaza. They are not proposing to have a final political solution for the Israel-Palestine issue. In Northern Ireland, there was a solution. In Colombia also, it was proposed to have a solution. And I think that's the most important point. This is not an agreement in the interest of those who support the two-state solution, which means end the Israeli occupation. And just one point, Benjamin Netanyahu still has the tools to sabotage any agreement.
Okay, thank you. And Michael, I'd just like to get your thoughts too.
So I'd start by agreeing with Javier. I mean, there needs to be maybe not a political solution, but certainly a path toward a political solution for this to be ultimately resolved. But I also agree with Nimrod that although I'm sure the Israelis, especially IDF, doesn't care about the future of Hamas members, they do need to have a path that tells them that there is a future for them, because that is going to be one of the biggest obstacles for them to giving up their only power, which is right now being armed. In order for that to actually go forward, I think you have to come up with a path that they have.
Okay, Michael, I'm afraid we have run out of time. I just want to say thank you to all of our guests there. Javier Abu Eid, Michael Mulroy and Nimrod Novick. Thank you ever so much for joining us here. And thank you too for watching. You can see the programme anytime by visiting our website, aljazeera.com. And for further discussion, go to our Facebook page. That's facebook.com/AJ Inside Story. You can also join the conversation on X. Our handle is @AJ Inside Story. For now, that's it from me, Frankie McCamley, and the team here. Al Jazeera's coverage continues in a moment. Stay tuned.